Hello and welcome to another Rightly Witterings. Cheers. Today we've got a 5-minute review. The book I've read this week is this, The Fragility of Bodies by Sergio Olguin. I think it's Olguin. I'm not too sure how you pronounce a name like that. Maybe it's Olguin. But very interesting. So what's this book about? Well, it starts off with quite a fascinating entry. It's all about a chap called Alfredo Carranza committing suicide, going to the top of a large building that had once been the Hotel Arizona, jumping off the top. And the reason why, he says, is nobody is to blame for this but me. I can't go on anymore. I killed them, all 4 of them. I knew that day I would kill him, that it would fall to me. We all knew it. All the way round I was waiting to come across them. At that moment I wanted to kill them, both of them, just for being there, for wanting to ruin my life. And he goes on a bit like that. Very strange beginning. So then we're introduced to the main character on the first page, the editorial meeting with Veronica Rosenthal, who is a journalist with a small magazine, and we're introduced to her as very much, not exactly slovenly, but she's got mismatched underwear, she's got multicoloured trousers she shouldn't have bought or worn. She was avoiding her reflection since she'd turned 30 and her body had made adjustments to the new decade and so on. So she's a woman with normal sort of difficulties. But we've got the chap who's committed suicide. Veronica goes to speak to the family of the chap just to get a little bit of background information for her magazine. And while doing it, she discovers that there's a lot of these deaths on the trains. And the suicide is not because the guy was a mass murderer or anything, it's because he was a train driver. And fairly routinely, train drivers suffered the difficulty of somebody jumping on the tracks to get killed, or young kids playing chicken. 2 kids standing in the path of a train and seeing which one will be the one to bail out first. And Veronica gets quite interested in this. She goes and meets with a train driver who is a friend of Carranza, and the train driver takes her in his cab for a ride, and he says, you'll see what we're talking about when you come on the cab. And while in the cab, they suddenly come across 2 11-year-old, 12-year-old little boys. Both of them jump out of the way before train hits them, but Veronica can see what sort of an impact it's having on the driver. And apparently the train drivers in this part of Buenos Aires often have to go and have psychiatric help because they're so traumatised by the number of people that they've killed. Well, Veronica gets interested in this and starts investigating and discovers there's rather more to it than that, because it's actually based on a gambling network who are grooming young kids to take them to the railways to get them to stand in front of trains. And that's what this story is all about. It's all about the search for the people who are responsible for this gambling network. And it goes all the way up politically, so it becomes really quite a good tense political thriller. So what do I like about it? The writing is extremely good. Now, let's just be clear about this. I say the writing is extremely good. That means that Miranda France, the translator, is extremely good, because there's no way of telling what the original book would be like. I can't read Spanish, I assume it's in Spanish, but the translator has done a superb job. She's really brought this book to life. What do I not like about it so much? There is the beginnings and a fairly troubling sexual relationship between Veronica, the journalist, and the main train driver that she gets to know as her main informer about all these deaths, a guy called Lucio. That starts out believably, quite straightforwardly, but it suddenly develops into this environment where the author gives Veronica some very strange words to say. I mean, she calls the train driver a murderer. Why would she do that? There's no need for it. It goes into sexual exploits between these two, and again, it ends up with her being really vicious and unpleasant to her lover, and it doesn't to me ring true. I don't understand why the writer would have given her that sort of aspect. Now, I can sort of understand if it was the writer trying to give some sort of additional impetus to her as a journalist. I can sort of quite get that, but if that's the case, it didn't come across to me. So this was a book I really enjoyed. It took me only 4 days to read it, which, bearing in mind I'm heavily into editing right now, that's not much time at all. So it's a book that I picked up. Fascinating subject matter, really well told story on the thriller side, but the sex sort of came across a bit like Jaws, the original book. I once read that when the author wrote that, there was no sex in it at all, but he was told by his publisher or agent that if he wanted to sell the book, he had to have some sex. So he put in a totally gratuitous, brief affair with a woman, which never really worked for me. But the book sold, it made a film, it made millions and millions of pounds, so fine. But I sort of get the impression perhaps the sex in this was sort of put in partly like that, or perhaps it had the other problem that authors often have when they plot out a story in a detailed manner. Sometimes the characters don't conform to the brilliant plan and synopsis, and so the author forces them into going to a route that necessarily they wouldn't have done. Possibly that. I don't care. If you see this, well worth a read. Get hold of a copy and let me know what you think. And that's it for today. Now I've got to read some more books for next week, and hopefully they'll also make a 5-minute review. But for now, thanks a lot for watching. If you've got any comments, if you've read this book and you'd like to make a comment about it, put it in the comment section down there. There's a Patreon link if you'd like to support this channel and help me buy more books so that I can review them. That's where you go for that. Subscribe, hit the bell button for notifications, share it, like it, do all those things, and in the meantime feel free to have a cup of tea as well. I do. Cheers. See you next time.